Hello, welcome back everybody. Let's have a look at Matic then, and obviously Bitcoin, because the two at the moment have played out a similar move, as in the way that they've pulled back together. So Bitcoin first of all has been bouncing, should I say, rejected from this descending trend. That's where it did it yesterday, and today it's falling down as a result of its second attempt to push through that barrier. It's only just collapsed now, bringing Matic sort of down 6% from top to bottom on this level here. That's the current we'll call it 6.5% wick down that we've got there. But to focus on the positives, Matic's actually broken through its main area, its main source of significant resistance, which is that 2.7 cent area. That 2.7 cent area should have been a rejection technically, because we've not seen that level get tested since all the way back in just the very end of June, where we basically were rejected so heavily from that we just completely crashed down to our lowest point. So that was the main trigger point for Matic to completely collapse in on itself. So the fact that we've broken above there now is a really big deal. It's a little bit scary, in fact, that we have broken above it, because it suggests that there might end up being parabolic FOMO going on at any moment now. Now, with or without things like Coinbase announcements and this, that and the other, going just off the TA, what I can tell you is that despite all of this fear that we will collapse, and we might do, I mean, we're definitely due for a pullback, and we were pulling back at the moment, definitely, and to pull back beneath 2.7 cent, that wouldn't be too much of a big deal. Ideally, we just need to stay above 2 cent, to be honest. 2 cent has to hold, otherwise we will have a full retrace probably at this point. But to be honest with you, everything looks bullish. We've got the golden cross which took place here, so from this level here you could consider all of this a result of the golden cross. So let's have a measure move from the bottom of that wick to the top of the wick. And that is a 23% move, which is a pretty strong move after a golden cross. Usually you'd expect a little more, but we could say that some of this was anticipated, so maybe the moves from back here were golden cross moves, and that's the sort of that's almost a, well, I didn't measure the whole thing, but that'll be about a 50% move there, give or take. That's more like what you'd want to see after a golden cross, and that's the sort of thing that I was talking about sort of back here when we were waiting for this golden cross to take place. So now that we've got that, has it played out, or everything's definitely looking bullish. I mean, it's extremely bullish still. There's one thing that I looked upon, which was this, and again, it's a very, very small chart when you look at it on the weekly. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. But we do have a cross here on the weekly itchy cloud, the conversion line crossing over the baseline, which would suggest a continuation of this move. But again, with a chart so small, it's difficult to say if that holds any relevance at all, but that's what that indicator definitely does suggest. That is on this weekly chart that we have right now. So if we close this weekly, which should only be another 36 hours away, and we'll have that closed, off, then I would say that we will still have continuation of this. As surprising as it sounds, we will have continuation of this move onto next week. Now, if we close this candle body above this level, this will be the highest body candle close Matic has ever had on a weekly, which is also extremely bullish. You can see that, yeah, we've had big moves. We've had a huge wick. Look at the size of this wick. So we've had Matic at a much higher level than this, but we've never had a candle body close anywhere above the level of 2.5 cents. So let that sink in for a little minute there. If this candle closes on the weekly above these levels, above that 2.5 cent level, it would suggest it's still bullish, because it's the first time it's ever done it. So bear all that in mind. We've got a cross on the conversion baseline. We have a very strong, currently looking very strong candle body on the weekly, and on the daily we've got our golden cross still, and currently everything's looking pretty bullish. In order for this golden cross to peter out, we'd have to completely crash back down beneath the 200 EMA, which would actually be down at 1.4, almost 1.5 cent actually. So just let's try not to be too over optimistic, but also let's let the TA, for what it's worth, tell us what it wants to tell us, which is basically that it's still bullish and it wants to continue up, which sounds crazy. So continuing up doesn't necessarily mean that I'll buy it now and go in. I mean, I've been in Matic for the best part of the year, accumulating all along this level. I've just been picking more and more up all the time, so I'm very, very, very happy with what's happened. And it's a very difficult one to trade, to be honest with you. I keep toying with the idea of selling it when it reaches these tops, but because the chart is very small and it's got very little to go by at the moment, considering I've accumulated so much at these bottom levels, I think I personally am just going to leave it. But I would not be surprised if we come back down within this boundary level here. And start to waver around in here and essentially accumulate, because there's a few ways that this could happen. The better way would be to accumulate within this area. We could accumulate above this area. That'd be even better. If we could accumulate above 2.7 cent and allow that area to be support for us, and essentially look a little bit like one of these patterns here, especially this one. This is the more constructive one. This level here, all of this level here, that's the more constructive level. If we could hang around, looking a little bit more like that above this level, the next move up, which would be, probably as strong as this, so maybe doubling again, would be a lot healthier than it would be if it were to double again, in the next few days, which is what seems to be happening with Matic. Every couple of days now, we're going up 50% every couple of days, which is, it's nice, obviously, but it's, those sort of moves can't last. But anyway, that's generally what I would like to see. Accumulation either within this zone would be fine. Accumulation above this zone would be even better. But another big spike up here would make me a little nervous. Doesn't necessarily mean though when it does collapse back down, it'll collapse back down to these levels. But what it would mean is that it can't sustain that kind of growth forever. There is a chance that if it does make these big bold moves, it will be bigger than what we see here. We could be seeing ourselves doubling from our all-time high, so we get to our all-time high at 45 cent, and then double from there, making our way closer to 9 or even 10 cent before it completely collapses in on itself. That is a definite possibility. But for the moment, we want a little bit of a pullback. We need a bit more of accumulation to sustain a healthy growth on this. An all-time high to be reached, which was at 4.5 cent, could quite easily be achieved by the end of December. At this rate, definitely. But with all the indicators showing how bullish it is, and Matic being the kind of coin that it is, it's very volatile. 4.5 cent would not be completely off the cards at all by the end of December. A new all-time high by January was what I was expecting, but Matic is front run. Not everything I've said. I mean, I've been saying these things, and people who watch this channel kind of have, this is where you come to get your Matic updates, really, almost on a daily basis. But so these targets and these figures I've kind of said, and people are aware of those, but they seem to be coming around the corner a lot quicker than I expected. I did say that 2 cent it would be in December. Now, obviously, it's December. What's that? In a couple of days. So yeah, I mean that has been reached. But it looks like we could be getting 3 cent by tomorrow. So it's good. It's scary as well though. But it's still all good. Anyway, I'm going to leave that one with you there. Like I say, it does still appear to be bullish. So just in a nutshell, we've got conversion baseline cross on a weekly, which looks good. We've got a weekly that's at an all-time high as far as its candle body is concerned. We've got golden crosses on Satoshi and on Tether. And all major moving averages are very steeply sloped and looking pretty bullish. it's definitely looking bullish, so you don't need me to tell you that. But those are the main things that I'd look at. But be prepared to have some form of pullback on this. But I would expect to see continuation into 3 cents areas, and the next areas of resistance are pretty much going to be only around this area, around 3 cent itself, 3 cent, 3.2 cent, and then I would expect from there, it's kind of making its own rules at that point, because again, it's never really been there in that territory. These wicks don't really count for much. Wicks, you cannot really account for wicks. The only major part of these wicks, I would say with 3.5 cent, where we kind of tested twice, 3.5 cent would be a big deal. But then as soon as that's done, then yeah, we're going up a whole more cent before we find a rejection. And if we don't get rejected from there, then the sky is actually the limit. And unfortunately, I cannot begin to I can't actually begin to do TA at that level. To be honest with you, we are making new highs of an asset it's never been up there before. And it's always an interesting thing when that sort of thing happens. You have to wait and see what happens. I can't tell you where it's going to go from that point. I mean, when we see it pull back and where it bounces down to and reaccumulates from, then we can start to talk about it. But once it's beaten 4.5 cent, we'll have to basically just wait and see. It'll all be to do with volume and to do with speed. And it could be quite dangerous, to be honest with you. We can see how bullish it looks at the time, or if things start to look weak, but once we reach that level, anything is possible. Anyway, I'm going to leave it with you there. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a nice evening. Take it easy.